Welcome to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you, as always, by Camel Cigarettes. Remember that more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. So take the Camels challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference this fine tobacco can make in your life. I know that you've been brainwashed into believing that smoking is bad for you, but for a moment, consider the history of this great product. When we all knew that smoking was good for you, America was the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Our economy smoked, our military smoked. We were the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. And now that we have abandoned the product that more than any other represented the soul of this country, we're collapsing. I believe that the only way to save America is for Americans to return to the values that made us great. Take the Camels challenge. If not for yourself, do it for your country. Okay, so last week, my cat, Lila, was in the background, and there was a comment that appeared, and I just thought I would introduce you to the animals this week. So let me share my screen, and I'll show you some pictures. So here we go. All right, so here, this is Bella, who's often in the background here as well. She's my little lab, and she's about 12 years old, kind of senior. Hip dysplasia, she's got rickety hips, just like me. I'm going in for hip replacement surgery at the end of August. Probably going to have a hiatus in these productions around then. And this is Lila, who you saw last week, and she is the queen of the house. This is Leo, and he's the only one who gets to go out on his own. Here are the two new additions to the family. This is Maya, and then this is Ellie. And they actually, I was Passover, first day of Passover, I was walking, that's April. I was walking with Bella in the woods, and these two came out of nowhere. And without looking at me or having anything to do with me, went over to Bella and attached themselves to her. It was very unusual to have these two kittens in the woods. Somebody must have dumped them there, is all I could think. And they were freezing and they were starving, and they decided that Bella was their savior. And so they followed Bella back home. And so they joined our household. The same way as when you see Lila in the background, I belong to Lila. Lila does not belong to me. I belong to Lila. She has chosen me to be the person that she prefers. So when someone's on my lap, it's most likely Lila. Anyway, so those are the animals. And I guess maybe I could stop the share at that point. Go over here. Where's back to the meeting? Where am I? Oh, okay, stop the share. There we go. Okay, there we are. I'm still, not terribly good at all this, but from the beginning, I've said we don't do second takes here. This is it. So last week, I said I would say a little more this week about the Iroquois, and it occurred to me that I ought to say a few things about what I know about Indians from personal knowledge. So, to begin with, I was raised in New York City, which is the home of the famous Mohawk Skywalkers. The Mohawk tribe, the Mohawk Indians, the Mohawk Skywalker tradition began in 1886 when some daring Mohawk men from the Kanawaki tribe took jobs helping to build the Victoria Bridge across the St. Lawrence River, which borders their reserve near Montreal. Just as early European settlers had remarked at the Mohawks how they fearlessly crossed rivers on narrow logs, early ironworkers showed an unusual aptitude for climbing and working on the steel beams. Having once hunted, trapped, and farmed throughout the Northeast woodlands, the Mohawks of the Haudenosaunee, that is the Iroquois Confederation, forgive my pronunciation, eventually took to the high steel in the burgeoning metropolitan areas. These indigenous riveting gangs spoke their native languages on the jobs while helping to build the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, the Rockefeller Plaza, and many other structures shaped in New York from the 1920s and 1930s. And that was that little piece was a quote from history.com. But I never knew any of this while I was living in New York. I never met any Indians while I was growing up in New York. And in 1973, I moved to St. Louis to do my undergraduate work at Washington University. And I didn't meet any Indians in St. Louis either, despite living a stone's throw from the Cahokia Mountains. Cahokia, by the way, was a city at its peak in 1050 to 1200 AD, was larger than many European cities, including London. It spread over 6 square miles and had a population of between 10 and 20,000. In fact, and this comes from Charles Mann, who has a wonderful book, 1491, what America was like before Columbus. The Inca Empire was probably the largest state on the earth. It was, if it was in Europe, it would stretch from Stockholm to Cairo and cover every imaginable ecosystem. The Aztec Empire was had one of the world's largest cities as its capital, Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City. It was bigger than London or Paris. But it wasn't until I moved here to Big Rapids in 1989 that I met Gordon Henry, who is Anishinaabe, a native to this area. He was a young professor, just like me. He taught English, I taught history. This literally was his land. This is where he came from. And so when he and I joined the faculty together, we both moved into campus housing, and he was across the hall in these little apartments. And his 2 girls and my son, Isaac was about 6, used to play together. And we became friends. And a part of the friendship was that we were both not Christians. There was a certain bond there. I remember Isaac was taking karate, and there was they had this program for the parents to come and see how wonderful it was, and all the little kids are in their karate uniforms and they're doing their katas, and the instructor wanted everybody to to think good thoughts, and he said, I want everybody to think something really good, like everybody think something you love, like everybody loves Christmas, right? And they all, when the instructor said that, and Isaac didn't, respond. And on the way home, he said to me, Abba, yes, Isaac, aren't any Jews in the world, are there? He just noticed that he was all alone. And I said, yeah, I mean, well, you see, you're the only Jews, Jew in the class, and you're the only Jew in the school, and you're the only Jew in the building. He said, no, the Henrys are Jewish. I said, no, Isaac, the Henrys are Native Americans. They're Indians. I said, yeah, aren't Indians Jewish? And he's like, so he had also picked up on this, and at any rate, it was a great honor to be invited by Gordy to join him at the Sundance. He regularly went to the Sundance at the Turtle Mountain Reservation in North Dakota. This is like north of Minot, North Dakota. It's right on the Canadian border. And Francis is the spiritual leader there. It's just a huge honor. So I'm there, and I'm used to fasting. Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur, you fast from sundown to sundown plus an hour. So, it's like a 25-hour fast, no water, no food, no nothing, so I'm used to that. But the Sundance, it goes for 5 days, and I remember before it began, Francis said that your belly button is going to meet your spine, and but he also said that what is it that we can give to God, who has everything? It says the only thing we have to offer is our hunger and our pain, and we can offer that for the healing of the world. The ceremony was actually illegal for years in both Canada and the United States. In the United States, they passed the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act in 1978. That's when it became legal, 1978. I should tell you, as an aside, that I had a friend here at Ferris also, Bill Momberto, who was an elder of the Grand Rapids Circle of Tribal Nations. And he told me that his father was raised by his uncle in traditional ways, and his birth was never registered. So he lived, with his uncle, and they trapped and they traded. And every year they come into Traverse City to trade. And one year, Bill's dad, his appendix burst. He ended up in the hospital. And afterwards, the hospital authorities did not want to give the boy back to his uncle. His uncle had no proof, and there were no papers. And what was he doing? He didn't, he had a medicine pouch on him, and he wasn't a Christian. And so they took him away and sent him to a Catholic, an Indian Catholic school. And afterwards, he went into the military, and then he married, and moved to Grand Rapids, and Bill was born. And Bill, and then when Bill was 9, 10 years old, his dad took him into the woods and began to teach him Native American ways, tribal ways, and told him that this has to be a secret between us, because if people find out, they could take you away. He feared that the state would take his son away. And I have to tell you that I have had that fear myself, that the state would take my son away. Isaac went to this program, the DARE program, where they have this little box where the children were supposed to put in notes if there was something that was bothering them, and parents got busted because of that. Right? Anyway, the idea is that it's totally illegal to give your child alcohol. And yet every Shabbos, according to Jewish custom, we are an alcohol consuming people. So that from the time he was a little kid, he was drinking wine. When he's 13 years old, he's supposed to be able to drink 4 cups. If you don't build up to it, you're going to be under the table on Passover. So, but it is illegal. So anyway, before the fast started, Gordy was whittling these 2 short sticks to sharpening them at both ends. And on the 3rd day of the fast, he went up to the center pole, and Francis took the sticks and then cut in his pecs and pushed the sticks through and tied them to these ropes, which were tied to the center pole. And then Gordy backed away as the drums were beating until finally they were taut. And then he threw himself into the air. And I got to tell you, I'm a heavy coffee drinker. And anyone who drinks coffee knows that fasting results in incredible headache from the caffeine deprivation. But when Gordy threw himself into the air, I burst into tears and my headache vanished. Francis was right. Gordy's pain cured my headache. I think I'll leave it there for this week, and we'll pick up this more here. I realized as I was getting into this, I have a lot of stories to tell and things that I'd like to say about Native Americans. Before we get on to African Americans, we got a ways to go. So this week, that's enough. More bad news. I'll talk to you next week.